Welcome to NeuroMovement Revolution with Anat, Baniel, where you will discover breakthrough possibilities for your life through the brain's power to change. We're so happy that you can join us in making the impossible possible. The topic of our second episode is From Fixing to Connecting, leveraging the power of the brain to change.
The thing that I realized is most important, perhaps, to shift in how we deal with, approach, do intervention, take care of, communicate with the child, is a big shift inside of us. When we look at a child that has issues, there is an enormous drive to want to help the child. And there can be also a lot of anxiety on the part of the adult. It can be due to medical problems and or also functional problems. That means the child is not developing within the parameters that are within the normal range or the typical range for development. And naturally, there's the tendency to want to just fix the child. And I discovered that it's the opposite of what the child needs and what the brain needs. So I put it there. Any other question? Hi, everybody.
Well,
Niels just
obviously,
moves into a learning mode.
Yeah, totally. I mean, obviously, I want to hear what you want the parents to know and practitioners. I know we have a lot of practitioners listening as well as parents. But I guess for me, I remember being, I'm now a trainer in the training, but at the time when I was an assistant, I remember talking to you during the children's mastery. And it was during the period of the mastery where the student practitioners get a chance to work with a child under supervision from us and from Anat. We call it the practicum. And there was a break between two of the rounds of the practicum, and I was with Anat in the kitchen. And by this time, I'd already been working with her for many years. And she said, it's extraordinary. We have all this knowledge and we have all the technique and all our different ways of interacting with the children. But I think, she said, I'd say 95% of the success of our method is our ability to connect with the child. It's so fundamental. I mean, for me, that's why you put it there at the beginning of the book. It really is, it's the ground on which we base everything else.
Yeah. So the question is, what do we mean by that? And so the first, you're obviously, if you're listening right now, I would recommend or suggest that you take just 10, 15 seconds to go inside of yourself and see whether already before I or Neil say anything additional, that you can recognize moments in yourself where you would label them, I was trying to fix my child. Maybe it was even this morning or this evening, or and it's not like we're bad or you're bad or wrong. The suggestion or the invitation to do the process of learning to shift from fixing to connecting is really an invitation for us, the adults, to go through a very profound personal evolution, change, learning. It's not a thing you do. It like in terms of, you jump on one leg 5 times and on the other 4 times. It's not a recipe per se. It's an emotional, cognitive, spiritual place where at every moment that you're with a child, if you feel the drive to fix it, to pull, and we'll talk about more like specifics, that you actually recognize it, because the moment you recognize it, it creates an opening for you to do something different. or at least to not take action upon your impulse, So what do you think the question is that, and I'm saying it to everybody, that then parents say?
Well, what can I do? How do I do it?
Exactly. I put you on the spot, but yeah. So if I don't fix them, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, what can I do? And we are going to get that into that very consistently and thoroughly through the podcast today. And I'm going to give some ideas as we progress in the podcast. And we will also, there's so many questions we got from people last time, and some of them give me an opportunity to address the question. Today, I would really like to focus about what does it look like when I'm in a fixing mode, and what does it look like when I'm in a connected or connecting mode. So the thing that I'd like to do is it take me a second to find. Okay, that's. I'm almost the. Okay. The first question that I would like to respond to as part of this topic is, hi Anat, this is from Cheryl. I have a question about using, no, there's another question, but I don't have the name. Maybe it's the same person. Why not correct? The question, why shouldn't I correct the child? And the example I like to give to people is, what have you ever been told straight up and pull your shoulders back? Or something else about how you are? And maybe as a child, as an adult, or maybe your spouse would like you to do something different. But let's just take this, sit up straight and pull your shoulders back. Most people that are told that hundreds and hundreds of times. How come they're told it hundreds of times? Because it didn't work the first time, and it didn't work the second time, and it didn't work the third time. So correcting people does not work. Direct correction does not work. And I have it in the book. I don't recall if I mentioned it in the last podcast, but I realized early on when I started working with the children that were, put in braces and were set up with pillows on the side, and or told to a word, and they would say the word again and again, trying to get them to talk, or a child on the autism spectrum that gets prompted and prompted and prompted and prompted. And I looked at that and I was baffled. I was baffled because I couldn't figure out how come people continue doing something that obviously is not working. That alone by itself is okay. People expend their energy any way they want. But what I observed and I was wondering is, what does it do to the recipient? What does it do in this case to the child? And again, I'm going to give you a few seconds to go deep into yourself for a moment and imagine somebody doing that with you, someone telling you something again and again and again, and maybe it's every day a half hour in therapy, or maybe it's every breakfast, or maybe it's first of all, what is it going to feel like? Because when we realize how it feels, well, I assume you could garner an experience like that already. It really doesn't feel very good, does it? And what does it actually do? So our intention is a pure one. Our intention is a good one. But what does it do to the recipient? And aside from not feeling good, And what I realized, I thought, oh, these people are getting to become experts at doing the wrong thing. They're just becoming experts because the brain learns what its experiences, and this is focused and it has emotional intensity to it. We're training our kids into their limitations. The problem is that sometimes there can be a little bit of progress. So we assume that what we did is good because it gave some progress. But what we don't compute behind it is what is also happening that is going to limit the progress right now and in the long run. Are there any questions coming in or any comments?
No, I mean, they're listening at the moment, comments coming in saying hello from all over the world.
Okay, hello from all over the world.
We have Germany on, we have Canada on, we have Dubai on, and many from the United States. Hello from Switzerland. And so we've got Colorado is listening from Marina Mortinga. And South Africa. Very exciting.
Great. So.
Oh, here we are. We just had a question. Tracy Beeching Foss. How do you help a child to talk that is still not saying much verbally, but does point and communicate in other ways? So the name is? Tracy.
Okay, Tracy, thank you for the question. I'm going to use, first of the thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to answer your question the way you asked it. Because the way you asked it is a request for a thing you do, like, I don't know, an action. You talk to them this way or you repeat something a few times. I don't have an answer to that. And I will never have an answer to the direct question like that. And that question represents an attempt to problem solve the way we problem solve normal things around us. You know, if something breaks, you use glue or crazy glue to glue it back together. I had a leak in my sink in the kitchen, and there was a fitting that didn't work, and he went and he got the fitting and he put it correctly, and hopefully there's not a leak anymore. This is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. And you guys hang in there with me because it's not simple where I'm going to take you. This kind of answers, this kind of fixing is very useful and very powerful in the mechanical world, in mechanical systems. So if you have a chair or a sink or a car and it can become pretty complex. I mean, we're driving now these computerized machines basically that are remarkable. The technology, the engineering, the mathematics that go into it, remarkable. But still all that stuff, we make it so it works in what we are accustomed to, which is the mechanical world, the physical things that we can touch. So if I touch Neil gently like this, he feels it, but nothing happens. But if I do that, I push him to the side. This is how I learned to know the world from the time I was born. The problem here, or the need for shift, is the brain is not a mechanical system, it's an information system. And an information system requires information to work rather than mechanical forces that are driven. An information system works by very different principles. And the principles that we're accustomed from the mechanical world, like even many repetitions, is a form of forcing. It's a form of doing it and doing it. Like if he resists me, I will try harder. And then I'll repeat and I'll try harder. And then I'll repeat and I try harder. Again, we'll get into it in future blogs more. But right now, the brain needs to notice stuff, needs to notice what it's doing. Until it notices what it's doing, it can't learn in that area anything new. Now, I understand from the question that she does signing.
Yeah, it does point and communicate in other ways. So there's definitely communication.
Yeah, so when we talk about language, I just taught a workshop this past weekend in LA. It was just wonderful. And I had there a couple of speech therapists, but one woman who's a real big expert working with adult autistic, adult people on the autism spectrum that cannot speak. And she immediately, she and I were like two peas in a pod, because there is there's a question of communication and language and speech. So the very first thing that the child needs to have is the perception of actual communication, that I can do something, anything, and that will create an impact. It'll have an outcome in the world. So children, when they're little and at a certain point, they can differentiate the movement of the index finger from the rest of the fingers. They start pointing. They point, they point, they point, and it gets response. And people say, you want this, and give them the toy. They point this, they give them the toy. In the beginning, the child doesn't know why it's all happening, but gradually or quickly the brain sorts out, I do this, I tend to get the person's attention, and they might bring it over to me. So that's the beginning of communication. Language is so that there is a sense that there is something between what I do and what happens in relation to other human beings. Then language is the complex creation of sentences, of thoughts, of ideas. So you have people that can't talk. Again, autism spectrum, that's happens there, quite a bit. But you teach them how to use a computer, and they're like an amazing world of richness, of thoughts, of feelings, and they communicate those in our language. It can be English, it can be French, it can be anywhere, whatever language you were born into and that you know. But then there is speech. Speech is just one modality of delivering language. Now, we would like everybody to be able to speak, but it's important to distinguish it. And then I'm not going to give you an answer at this moment what you can do with your child, because I have no idea. I have to see the child. What I will say, in case you've already read my book, or you come on my website and read about the 9 essentials, or you can download a short ebook about the 9 essentials, then you can start using them with your child. But let me give you one big tip. Don't focus on her speaking. Look away from the speaking. Start doing it elsewhere. Because fundamentally, a child cannot speak because the brain is not differentiated enough and has not figured out how to do it. Asking them to do it directly can actually inhibit their ability to do it, because they're trying to do something that they don't have the mechanisms to do it with. So I don't know if that makes any sense. Tracy, if you can type, I don't know, you were on the call a second ago. Does that make any sense to you, or that just makes you feel more confused?
Well, as we know, there'll be a slight delay before we get Tracy's comment. So we'll come back to you, Tracy, but I have a question here from Gabriella Piccioni.
Oh my goodness. Okay, hi Gabby.
Could you talk a little about the power of attunement and how that makes ABM so powerful and distinct from other methods?
Yeah, okay, Gabby. I mean, you're asking an advanced question because the question is how to attune. How do we attune? So basically connecting with a child. So thank you, Gabby, but let me give you some ideas how to start. And I was thinking this morning, I got up and I was thinking, okay, we're going to do this blog. I'm going to talk to many people who have not perhaps done, the work or read, or the first thing is you can start becoming an observer, not a detached observer, not somebody who doesn't care, but an observer where you just observe your child and watch what are they doing and how are they doing it. That is, by the way, how I developed my whole method. because I had no idea what to do with the kids, because I was never trained to work with the children. But I had tools that I got initially, from training with Feldenkrais. So I observed them, and I was really interested to see what they do. And by the way, excuse me, one of the things that I very quickly realized is they had their limitations, but then I saw what they were doing, and I thought, my goodness, if they can do that, given their limitations, they have a fantastic brain. There is a fantastic brain there to work with. I didn't get seduced by the limitation to assume that the whole child is limited. It's a manifestation of something that requires help and support, but the brain has figured out other ways to organize itself and to organize action that it didn't know how to do before. So the first thing is observe your child and see what they do. And then look to interact with them where they are. So after I said 5 times that I'm not going to tell you what to do with your child, Tracy, I am going to give you a suggestion. I can't help myself. If you observe your child and if you see her communicating with you in those ways, join her and communicate back with her figure out, I don't know, gestures or grunts or whatever, communicate back with her. Not all the time, but some of the time, where you communicate back with her the way that she has figured out to have language. Because you make the brain more successful and more expanded in the use of language. And then, we can talk about the future. What Gabriella said in terms of, what did you call it? Attunement is a way to be attuned to your child. And when you do that, you don't do it because you're trying to fix her language issue. You're doing it because you're interested in doing it. You're interested in connecting with the child, and you're interested to see what happens when you do it, because she will respond. By the way, you'll be amazed how happy and how responsive children get when you join them, when you match them, because then you match them, they do what they do, and you can do slight variations around what you're doing, and they can follow you. When people try to fix the child, first of all, it tends to dissociate you from your child. It becomes a thing, a project, a success or failure, all those distinctions, which are really not very productive for this. And when you attune to your child, you will discover amazing things happening. Because their world starts making more sense to them when you do that. And when their world makes more sense to them, their brain figures out other things and new things a lot easier. There was a question I just
wanted to come back. So Tracy did actually get back to us. Thank you, Tracy. And she says, yes, it makes sense. I will download the 9 essentials. So stop focusing on words and speech, as you were talking before, but expose him to more and have fun and allow him to develop when he is ready. I hope that's kind of right.
It is kind of right. So let me tell you what's right about it. And let me give you a little bit more. And I know that that'd be useful for other people, because I had other questions. So where is her? Can I read it again? So you said, I will download the 9 essentials. That's very right. I suggest everybody does that. You will stop focusing on words and speech. What you're going to shift to is you're going to be focusing on your child. It's a training to feel and see the whole child. Last week was, what is it like to be a child with special needs? One of the things that it's like to be a child with special needs, you stop being a whole child for people. You're a symptom, you're a this, and it's very confusing for the kids because we grow as whole beings. So that's the first thing. and give yourself permission. Take vacation from worrying about it. I mean, give yourself a week or 2 weeks. And if you're doing the essentials, give yourself a month. Give both of you a month vacation. Maybe even stop therapy for 2 weeks. Have a great vacation off everything that has to do with speech. And don't expose him. So here I'm going to shift, because when you say expose him to have fun, you're again thinking that it's a chair you can make do things. You're picking up the chair, you're moving it here. You don't expose. You are engaging with the child, and you're observing what's fun and what's not fun for the child. And it's not like you have to do it all the time. It's like you do it 10 minutes at a time, 20 minutes at a time. That's a long time for a child and a brain. Give them breaks. Let them hang out. Let them become interested in other things. And that's one of the things that are very challenging a lot of times with children with special needs, because they need a lot more care. They need a lot more attention to be well, and then they get trained to never be on the floor or on their bed or wherever they are by themselves. Their brain has figured out that for survival, they have to have constant attention, constant engagement. So you don't expose him to fun. You can't expose him to fun. He can see you being happy. He has to experience fun, and you can't make him experience fun. You can just do things gently. You'll read the essentials so you'll know, and you'll see what's fun for him and what's not fun for him. That's connecting. I'm so happy you're in conversation with us. You make it so easier, much easier for me to talk about it.
So we have another question.
Yes. And Tracy, you can keep back if you like, if that makes more sense. Okay.
She does say, "Ooh, that makes huge sense." And
Tracy, you're my hero of the day.
You mentioned the 9 essentials, and the 9 essentials are going to be, each essential will be a topic in a podcast that comes up over the coming months. And these are our mechanisms for connecting with the child. I mean, fixing to connecting is going to come back as a theme over and over again, and you're going to think and find more and more ways and ideas of how to do that with your child. So next question, I have a question for Anat and Neil. Speaking of fixing, do you consider braces as fixing? My 2-year-old son walks better stable when he's wearing braces. It seems he doesn't mind wearing them. What do you think?
Wow, that's a big one. So let me tell you, when I can only take responsibility when I work with a child. If the child is working in other methodologies and so on, the decision has to be made within that context. So I want to make it very, very clear. What I'm talking about now is about my way of looking at it and thinking, and what I communicate to parents, provided I and my practitioners work with a child, because I know how it works within my world. There might be other methodologies that the doing it differently than I suggest will give better outcomes. So I want parents to really know, and that means that you're the one that has to make the decision which way you want to go and what makes sense to you, because you are the custodian of your child. So you not the doctor, not me, not anybody. In the end, it's you that makes the decisions. So when I get a young child and I say the word young on purpose here, and then I'll talk about slightly older children. When I get a young child that it's recommended to put braces, it is normally, let's talk about child in cerebral palsy, or even a child with autism spectrum that walks on their toes, or, it is definitely an attempt to fix, to put a brace that has the correct shape and make it so that with the idea that if the shape will be correct, the child will be able to walk altogether or walk better. My response to that is what I say to parents, and I've done it from just the beginning, because that's what made sense to me, is make sure that there is no medical reason to put the brace on. And I have, except for one situation which I'll maybe refer to, just remind me, Nuzo, that there's a reason to put a brace for a few weeks. I've never known a medical reason to put a brace because it's not an emergency. It's an attempt to coerce the system, like if the child leans heavily into the inside of the foot or any one of those things, or the knees buckle. There's all kinds of versions. So what's the condition that the legs, let's say polio. I mean, there's no polio anymore, but when I started working, there were older people that had braces because the polio made it that they didn't have the neural connectivity to the leg, to the lower leg. Of course you put braces there because otherwise they're never going to feel, they don't have the sensation, so their brain can't get trained or create the proper possibilities and organization. But if the child is not, if there is the sensation, the feeling, and the opportunity for perhaps increasing the connectivity between the brain and the leg, I say, unless we think that the child will never do better or learn to walk perhaps without a brace, then let's not put a brace. Because let me tell you why not to put a brace. One of the essentials is variations, variability and randomness. That means that there are many, many permutations and a sort of unintended experimentation of the system when we learn to stand and walk. So if you look at a typically developing infant, as they learn to come out gradually, and they start first putting the foot down, lying on the back, not intentionally, but it just happens to them. Then when they're on all fours, they shoot one leg to the side and press on the foot. The foot is completely turned in, which would be considered a really not great thing when you're standing up, but it's a very important part. And then when they already stand up, the feet, they're very flexible, the ankles. They rotate in, rotate out, they come on the toes, they come sometimes on the top of the foot. That's perfect. Because what that gives is it gives the brain the brain experiences all those, possibilities, and gradually extracts the one that gives them the most impact when they step. And that is felt because there are bones there. That is one of the most central elements of all learning and proper brain functioning. So I know I'm talking a little long, but I don't know how to make it shorter, so that it will make sense to you. So when we put a brace, we deny the variability. We deny the randomness. We deny the information. Remember, I just said it earlier, the brain is an information system. We deny the information the brain needs to work with to figure out what we call standing or walking. And I had something that I thought was important. Oh yeah, and what happens is, and that is just shows how functionally I believe my thinking is accurate, because children that have been in braces for many years lose sensation at the bottom of their feet. That means that when we flatten out, when we make something be the same without enough, because each one of us, when we walk, we have enough freedom that we create variability whether we know it or not. But when the brace really holds, and by the way, it doesn't correct the ankle, it doesn't make it work better, it just looks better from the outside. So, except for very rare occasions. So what happens is, I wouldn't put a brace on anyone. Now, if I get an older child that's been in a brace for a long time, I won't just take the brace away. But we will start working, and we will start talking to the brain, reminding it that there is an ankle there and a foot there. And the foot and the ankle joint are such complex structure, tons of tiny little bones, and it can move in so many different ways. And you say, what is that for? To move in so many different ways. So what we do is we don't try to fix it, because there's no fixing it, because I'm going to say something in a minute that is the core of it all, is we're going to quote unquote play with it, and we won't be just focusing on the foot. We will, because when you're in braces, it impacts how the spine is organized and how the pelvis is used and how the neck is used and how the eyes are used. So we get at it from different directions and get the brain to recognize there's a foot there and start having sensations. And then we have the child sometimes in the braces and sometimes out. And if they have two braces, we have them sometimes brace on one leg and not brace on the other leg. And then we change it over and so on. So you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to add a comment here, because you said unless there's a medical necessity, and somebody here asked about a brace for scoliosis. Now, if the scoliosis is beyond a certain point, then absolutely there needs to be support.
And usually it will be surgical.
Yeah,
to make
but
sure,
prior to the surgery, to have the, for safety. But, we work with people with scoliosis who've been diagnosed braces. And
yeah, but I'll get to the scoliosis in a minute, but it's a perfect question. Who is that?
L. Reimer.
Okay, I'll get to it in a second. So what happens is that we cannot fix, let you tell why. Because it's the brain that has to invent the solution. It's like you can't make anybody understand that 1 + 1 = 2, plus 1 = 2. But you can connect and see where they're at and what sense they make out of it and give them different richness of experiences, but not just focusing around numbers. But in general, because the brain gets better at learning generally, it doesn't get better at learning numbers. It becomes a better learning, stronger learning brain. So one more second is another way of saying it, that those variabilities and the freedom and the more ways of doing things gives the brain many more connections, and that creates underlying neural networks. That's fancy words, but underlying neural networks from which the brain can extract the pieces that it needs to put an outcome together. So think of it like a puzzle, but a puzzle that is not, that there are many different bits and pieces from which you're going to create a shape. If you have only 2 large pieces or 3, you don't have much freedom to do anything. But you have a lot of little bits and pieces. You can make the shape of a dog, of a cat, so think of it as language. You create enough underlying connections and permutations between the tongue and the breathing apparatus and so on, and language can start occurring. So I don't train people into language ever. And we've got many, many kids to start talking. Yeah.
So I have a couple of questions here. The first one, which is a very general one, and I think will resonate with everybody listening. Can you give advice to my inner child for the correct attitude to orient myself towards healing? I appreciate your mentioning of the urge for people to diagnose or fix. There's a lot of information out there, and it can be hard to find the right direction. Additionally, there happens to be a fear of hurting one's feelings by bringing attention to things one does not notice in one's own perspective, i.e. stroke symptoms. So how do you channel your inner child from wanting to fix?
Oh my God, I'm getting shivers just getting this question. It's so inspiring. Is this Jordan?
Jordan, yeah.
Okay, wow. What a question, Jordan. Well, if you don't have it, download the 9 Essentials and start doing it for and with yourself. So, it's really developing. I mentioned that because he said it to me one time and I was so surprised. And then I thought what he meant by it. Michael Merzenich, Dr. Merzenich, the quote unquote father of neuroplasticity science. So we were the third time that we met and we had conversation, and I was leaving and he said, Anat, you are enlightened. Now, he doesn't look like anything spiritual or anything like that. I didn't tell you. Oh, I never told you that. Yeah, because I feel a little weird telling it because it seems like I'm bragging about being enlightened and now I'm telling it to the whole world. Anyway, so the thing is that I realized that moving from fixing to connecting is moving towards being more, being enlightened is also not a thing, it's a process, it's a quality. And trust me, I can get very unenlightened at moments, and those around me know that. So, but when I work, I tend to do really well. Anyway, so the inner child is, I would like you to think about it, Jordan, both as the inner child, because there's so much in our childhood that gets us to feel like we're bad, we're not good enough, we're wrong, we're afraid we're going to make people who depend on not love us anymore, reject us. It's built into our genes, I believe. And what I'd like to say is, do your inner child and your current self at the same time, because your inner child is also your current self. It's just different aspects of yourself. So the thing to do is, you can take it from any direction. One is, it hasn't worked thus far and I'm alive, I can take another 5 minutes. There's no rush. There's no rush. One of the things that I tell my students, because they see me work and they think that I know ahead of time what I'm going to do because it looks smooth, so it looks like there's an A to Z, and then there are changes, oh my God, and all that stuff. My place of safety today, and I don't expect you to get there right away, is not knowing and being comfortable with not knowing. Any place that I feel I need to know now is an unhappy place for me, and it's a less functional place for me. So I can work of what do I need to get to enough safety so I can move, because we can go anywhere. We can be amazing, we can be horrible, we can be anything in between. So do the essentials on yourself. I highly recommend, I don't know if you've ever consumed my work or not, but we have movement lessons. You start doing the movement lessons, which are infused with the essentials and will make you feel better. I did the workshop and I asked people the next day in the morning, how do you feel? And this woman said, I just feel well. And I said to her, I tried to get more details. She said, I'm just well. I couldn't get more details from her. So that, and I will try, I'll certainly remember this question, and I'll try to weave it in through the podcast, because it's such an important, because your own personal evolution is the greatest gift you can give your own child, because your child's brain and your brain are one brain. And to get to the second part of your question, how do you tell people things that are difficult? There are two ways to do it. One thing that you have to do is clean yourself from any criticism or any something is wrong here. Not easy to do. If you can't clean yourself, don't say it. Now, if you can approach it with a friendly tone of voice and so on, you can say, oh my God, you just hit your nose. And I don't think you meant to. Can you try and touch my nose? That's what I do with the kids, because you know what it does? It makes them aware and gives them an option. Makes them aware, gives them an option. You don't take them away from what they are, but you can engage with that. Now, sometimes I work especially more with adults. I talk to them, but sometimes I look at them and say, this is really hard, isn't it? Or this really sucks, but let's see what we can do about it. I don't know that you want to take my style. I'm a pretty straightforward person, and it's not very American. But if you feel comfortable and you can do it gently and with love, and I do it because I know we can make a difference. And so what I was saying is I step in not knowing what I'll do, and that's my place of comfort. And that opens for me, I observe. And when I see stuff, I get ideas. And I start dancing with what I perceive. And there are times where there's what I perceive tells me not to engage. Then I don't engage.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So another question here, coming back to the children. My 7-year-old daughter has Down syndrome. Her sense of fun revolves around food and watching videos on her iPad. When I encourage more creative activities like painting, reading, or puzzles, she's less interested, or I need to use food as a motivator for these creative activities. How do I meet her at where she is when her two favorite things aren't necessarily so great for her? Thank you.
Well, I already love your daughter and you. Let me tell you, was it an iPad, right?
Yeah.
The iPad is a terrifically difficult competitor. They have designed it in terms of the principles of neuroplasticity. I don't know that they were thinking about neuroplasticity, but they have designed it in an ingenious way to make it that the brain just wants to go back there and it creates a organization, and a sense of success and predictability for the child in a way that is remarkably appealing. So I don't know. I don't know where you live. Maybe you can.
This is Leslie Takasugi.
Yeah, Leslie Takasugi. I don't know where you are, if they're practitioners, because what I'm going to suggest for you to do is really not easy to do. So you might want to get a few private sessions for your child. It really is not a good thing. It's not good for adults either, by the way. But at least the older adults in our population started without iPads and iPhones. So it really distorts the development of the brain in ways that are not good. And if there's additional demands or challenges on the system because of genetic or stroke or whatever it may be, it's really because it's an easy way for the brain to get engaged in the feeling of order and comfort and like safety. It's like wanting to go back there. I'm going to talk about from disorder to disorder maybe next time, from the job of the brain. Next time we'll talk about the job of the brain. Yeah, because it's very, very important to understand it, but I can't say everything in 1 hour. Okay, which I would have liked to. So if you can give her lessons, the thing to do is to expand her ability to engage with and make sense out of a painting, right? Yeah.
She's in Eugene, Oregon. So
oh, Oregon.
we have a bunch of practitioners in Oregon.
Yeah, I don't know Eugene, but we have practitioners in Oregon. So get on the website, and we have really great people. Because the thing is that she's not interested in it because she doesn't have her brain is not developed enough to make sense of it and to take interest in it. So it doesn't mean it can't develop to it. I'm sure it can, but right now it has something that is already. It's sort of like it's the lukewarm water pool where it knows it's going to be comfortable. So it's going to where it's familiar, and the more she does it, the more deeply grooved in it gets. That means that the brain gets a stronger and stronger inclination to do it. And I've had children that when I took away, meaning in the session, the iPad, they literally got an anxiety attack and freaked out. So, we work sometimes, I start with the iPad, but when I work with them and get them really attentive and infused spontaneously in the sensations they have in their own body as they are moved and touched, then the iPad is forgotten. And that's the opportunity to start getting the brain driving in a place where it keeps growing and developing. Otherwise, it really makes it very hard. That's why I suggest a private session. But another thing to do is just hide the iPad. Take her out. Walk with her. I don't know, find easy things to do. You expand the vocabulary of how you engage with her and take her away from iPad lives. Don't take the iPad 100% right away, because that would be too traumatic for her. Okay? That's the best I can say, and I give a heads up to all parents. Really, I would just not have them, because it's the best babysitter there ever was, is iPhone and iPad. Better than TV. TV was already a problem, but better than TV, better than live babysitters. By the way, the parents, and it's very hard to do again, the parents are a lot on their devices. So the kid is there, and the parent is there, and the parent is on the device. So the kid is already, figuring out that thing there, and then they start crying or something, the parent gives the device to the child. We have to go into old-fashioned approach more. The child cries, you pick them up. You don't give them an iPhone or an iPad. And then when the child has a rich life and it's already a brain that knows how to learn and knows to expect new stuff and knows to problem solve more, giving them 10 minutes or 15 minutes to play a game and so on, letting them know it's going to be a certain amount of time and taking it away, that's fine. Because you're in the world, you're in current world. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to go back into it again, because maybe we'll come back and do a podcast that features working, with equipment and other things.
Yeah, I do want to come back to it.
There are a couple of other comments about braces.
Okay, let's hear, because we talked about it. I'm sure there'll be lots more in the future too.
One of them is from, let me see, Rachel Wynn. Now, her son has seizures and had hypoxia when he was younger, so his brain function is not there like it should be. So he's functioning about a 12-month level, although he is 10 years old. So he can't understand directions, and his feet tend to turn under pretty extremely. So they're sort of trying to use the braces to avoid the foot becoming contracted.
What I'd recommend for you is to contact Dr. Jordan. You can...
Dr. Paul Jordan.
Paul Jordan, he's in New Jersey, right? Yeah. He's... I
think he was a neurologist, and he actually had a stroke himself, and he now works as an orthotist. He makes orthotics, and he works in collaboration with a surgeon called Dr. Nuzzo, and together they really think functionally, they think about the brain. And if any of our children we think could benefit from braces, we always recommend that
not braces. No, it's different. Sorry. When we work with a child and they start having the upright position, not from the feet, but from the pelvis, that means that they can sit up, and when their back and their head coordinates properly or sufficiently with the pelvis. Because you can think of legs, if you shorten them, the feet will be at the base of the pelvis, and that will still be standing and walking, right? So sitting is a version of standing without legs. So, but when the back, there's more, there's a mapping of the back in the brain and functional mapping, so it can move, and there's a sense of balance and so on. That's when Dr. Nuzzo does surgery on if there's the tightness of the legs or the distortions, because he knows that and he does very little. I mean, he's a genius anyway. And then immediately after the surgery, a day or so after, we start working with the child, and he puts the child feet in a cast. And then he puts them in a brace, but the brace is a progressive thing. So I worked on one child, and I said to him, the child, can I just get rid of those braces completely? Because I had the child a little in, a little out. He said, absolutely. If the child is functioning, absolutely. So it's very dynamic. It's connected to the child. It's connected to what the child is doing. And we're coochie-cooing the brain. We're all the time seeing how much we can get the brain to do even better job and even a better job. So it's a process. And Jordan works very closely, so he thinks completely functionally. And I don't have his information, I didn't expect to, but that's my suggestion for you, because I think he's amazing, and he's very honest, and he's a very loving man. Yeah, okay.
So there's one more question about braces, and then one more about the iPad.
Okay, oh my God, okay.
So the braces question, what if we just use the braces for an hour or two during the day, then do a variety when he is out of the braces for the other part of the day? My son's foot rolls in so much and he goes on his toes, so I'm very worried for him to continue in that pattern and deforming his feet if he doesn't wear braces. His right hip is also going out a bit because of his walking pattern. So we're trying the braces together with therapy to help teach his brain of new ways of moving so his feet don't roll in and hips don't go out. We're very confused as to what the best solution is. He also recently had Botox to help with his hip. I know that Botox isn't a solution and we're not really for Botox, but wanted to give it a try again after a few years as we were out of ideas. We're religious with therapy, and I've read your book and do implement some of the 9 essentials. We've also done a few ABM intensives. Also, with the long braces that he's currently wearing, he just doesn't want to walk, but without them, he walks with us holding him under his arms. But as I said, the feet roll in on his toes and scissor.
Who's talking?
This is Megan Potier.
Okay, hi Megan. First of all, thank you for the question. Megan, I'm going to say something, and please receive it generously. That means it's not a criticism on my part, but it's an opportunity through your question to talk to the whole audience. A child, when I go to the grocery store and I think, okay, I'm not going to have time to buy food for a whole week, I go and I put on also this and also this and also this, so I have enough food to cook for a week. Let's just put it this way. A child is not a basket that the more we put in, the more outcome we get. It's the brain doesn't work that way. That's the mechanical approach. It gets heavier and we have more. So having said that, you are confused, and so many parents are confused. When we work with children, except for rare occasions, we ask the parents to stop other therapies because the brain of the child is not a basket. It's confusing for the child. So let's say if we use the essential of going with the system, and moving from fixing to connecting, and then the therapy puts them standing and keeps trying to make them walk when they actually can't walk because he has to be held and so on, then you have to select which one you're going to go by. Because if you came to me to work tomorrow, I would say to you, what was the name again? Sorry. Megan?
No. I think Megan, yeah.
Yeah, Megan. Yes. So Megan, I would say to you, and I would 100% embrace if you choose to continue with what we call traditional therapies. I have no criticism of that, but I would tell you that I need you to choose, because I saw what happens to children when I worked with them and they got a series of lessons with me and things started changing. But sometimes these changes are subtle. They're not like 100% solution, right? I've worked with kids over a few weeks and I've worked with kids over a period of 20 years. So it's a process. And then they go and get therapy that is more like the traditional therapy, fundamentally not adhering to the 9 essentials. That's what's important. It's not whether it's this therapy or that therapy. And they came back and they regressed. And I learned to know. I know if the child was handled certain ways because the brain responded to it, and it manifests when they come back. Now, I don't know how far we could or not help your child. I have no clue, but I really, really strongly recommend that you make up, you choose and you go a bunch of months one way and see. And then the biggest thing, if there is no progress, if there are no even subtle changes, give it some time, give it a week, give it a month. But if there aren't subtle changes, and I'm underlying subtle, that means that the brain is not learning. And a subtle change can be that the child is happier, even that, or that he's breathing better, or that his arms, the fingers, the coordination is working a little better. Anything that changes in correlation to the intervention. If you do not see that, please either stop altogether and let the kid just have the easier life, or try something else. Doesn't work, move on. But don't, all of you guys, the child is not a basket you throw in thing trying to fix them. You are actually detracting from their ability to make sense and improve. If that's the one thing you get from this podcast, that'd be really important. Last question.
Okay, so this is moving back to the iPad, and I think it's very important. We could come back to this again. But speaking of the iPad, we've introduced AAC language through the ProLoquo app, which I know it's a very well produced app, to our 5.5-year-old daughter. And it's all on the iPad. She loves to communicate and she really wants to engage with us and socialize. are we taking away her chances of developing speech language by using and modeling the AAC language with her?
Yes and no. Depends how you do it. We use, you see, you'll hear me say that because I look at it functionally from the point of view of the brain. So if that is, so very often, like using some sign language can be helpful for the child to learn to use language. It can be actually a help. But if that's all that's being done, it's like if you grew up in the United States and I dropped you now in China, you'd be lost. Your brain is totally grooved in to be successful in communication. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't learn it, but it's a whole other job. I use the device, I have parents and we use devices as a mechanism to activate the brain's expectation to communicate and to produce outcome. You see, because the brain is an action creation machine and it looks for outcomes. So we, if you read the Dr. Norman Doidge's book, The Brain's Way of Healing, he has a chapter about the work with Elizabeth. He doesn't call it an Baniel method, which I asked him to, but that's okay. I love him anyway. And I worked with Elizabeth initially with Feldenkrais, and then he got ill and died soon after. And I worked with her by myself for about 19 or 18 years. And she didn't talk. And there was no point in telling her to talk because she just froze. I mean, she just couldn't do it. She couldn't walk until she was 9. But in there, he talks about Elizabeth, and then he talks about a child I've been working with that couldn't talk with a similar condition to Elizabeth. And he talks about how I eventually got her to speak, because she got speech therapy that completely inhibited, just like Elizabeth. She just couldn't figure it out, and she got scared, so she stopped responding. She just like shut down. So you might want to read that. It'll give you some ideas, all of you guys. So the iPad, I would vary it. And again, I don't know if I'm sorry, but if you live near anybody, one of our teachers, maybe they can help you with that. But before I send you to teachers, because you might not want to go or you don't have somebody, try to play with it where she doesn't have to say the word. Even if she just makes a sound, make it be the word. So if she starts attaching sound to the iPad image that she creates, whatever she creates there, that could be something. But again, it's not drilling her. You make the sound and then see if she starts making the sound. And do it around moving and jumping and listening to music. I mean, don't make it like a narrow thing, because that's usually leads to failure. Listen, guys, we are 6 minutes past the hour. I am so privileged and grateful to have you with us. I have been wanting, as I said, to do it forever, because everything I'm telling you, I want to tell you probably 100 hours worth more. And I've told every one of those things I have told you at least, how many times? 1,000, 10,000 times. So I'm so happy to have a medium where those who are interested can have a chance to hear it. We'd love your feedback. We'd love more questions, and we'll pick up the questions that were in there in the podcast. And thank you, Neil. And in the future, you're going to start talking more. And thank you again, Dalit, Doug, and Tran for supporting us in making it happen. Thank you, everybody. And have a wonderful day. And by the way, on Facebook, if you are trying things or you are influenced by what you are impacted by what you hear here, then let us know. I mean, I would love to know, because I'm really doing it for you guys. So the more I get input, the better it is. And there was one more thing that I wanted to say that I thought was really important, and I don't remember. So it will have to wait.
It will. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.